Welcome to Marketing People Love. My name is Jacques Spitzer, and today I have Dan Gladden. He's the ECD of Interact, and this is an agency that we have come across as we have grown brands and they've prepared them from a design standpoint to go into retail, and they've had some big wins. We crossed each other's paths on Dr. Squatch and on Groons, but then also they have some really big wins with brands like Built Puffs and so many more. Dan has over 20 years of design experiences. He's won things like DNAD, Dieline, and Pent Awards. He's a absolute leader in the field of not only design, but packaging design and making really effective work that not only wins awards, but drives actual sales. And you know that that's what we're all about if you've ever listened to an episode of Marketing People Love. Dan, welcome to Marketing People Love. Are you ready to rock?
Ready to rock, man. Really nice to meet you. Let's get into it.
Let's start with your perspective on just those two particular brands, Dr. Squatch and Groons, and what design was solving for them before they really got ready to go nationwide in retail versus what they had been up until that point, which was a somewhat dominant force in a direct-to-consumer environment.
I think if we zoom out a little bit and start with the word brand, and as a general, we know how important brand is and brands are in today's world, and that doesn't mean just one little piece of a bigger picture. It's everything. So for that example, a brand isn't a piece of packaging and a brand isn't an ad campaign. It's about holistically how it shows up and how it talks to consumers, and each of those platforms has a different challenge, with it. So for example, we talk about Dr. Squatch, right? So as you say, we've crossed paths on a few projects. Dr. Squatch had this amazing kind of community and this buzz and great communication, disruptiveness, and a lot of that was either on the DTC or social and engagement platforms. Now,
they were also like at that point 10 years into their business, which I would point out also is a different moment in their journey in terms of maturity of where they're at. Yeah.
Exactly, and the client changes, as in the customer changes over that time, and I think. Yep. First of all, what an amazing brand. What a great perspective on, men's health and actually education, but doing it in a lighthearted and a kind of a fun way. And so the challenge for us was we're going into retail and we've always been able to show up with everything else around us, right, to support who we are, what we're about, and our brand. But then if we take the pack that they had today and put that onto a retail shelf, that just doesn't work, right? Because retail has to do a different job than DTC has to do. And the big thing for us was there was a big presence anyway with Dr. Squatch, as I said, built in this kind of more online environment. And there were some real quirky characters and distinctive elements about the brand. But also there was a communication level that we needed to associate with and disrupt with purpose on shelf, but also as we like to say here at Interact, challenge the category, not the consumer. So we knew that there was, a disruptive level going into store, as a brand, but also there was a job to be done of really making it easy and identifiable for the consumer to pick the product up and see what it is. So
I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to double down on something you just said, which was challenge the category, not the consumer.
Yeah.
That's gold, because to your point, you don't want to confuse, you don't want to be different for the sake of different and confuse people. And it's clearly something that you guys get right, which is you make things that stand out without confusing people, actually further getting them to get it faster.
Yeah. And look, I think a big part of that is just how we operate as an agency. We're very ingrained. I always like to say that there's nothing wrong with being, an awesome brand forward CPG agency. And everyone that works at Interact loves the category, right? Loves CPG, lives it, breathes it. And we see the challenges. And I think the challenge of the category, not the consumer, is very much around, you have to disrupt with purpose, right? You can't just disrupt for the sake of disruption. You disrupt with purpose because you find you kind of focus in on what makes you different than anyone else, because there's always a lot of markets that we're going into are saturated. We have to have a point of difference. So that's the kind of the disruption level, is identifying that. But then how do you clearly communicate that to a consumer in a way that, makes it easy for them not to be difficult to shop at shelf, for example. So it's very much of like identifying how we can set ourselves apart as a brand from our competitors, but then also not going to the point where the consumer doesn't understand what the product is. That's
Right.
that's how that works.
Right. And so obviously, to put a bow on this, what I've noticed with the Dr. Squatch work is that it has stood the test of time because it has created a system for them. And that's something that you guys do so well in a modular way, that when, back when, we launched Star Wars and Batman and Halo and all these different collaborations and licensing deals and brand work, it wasn't like they were coming up with new packaging every time. They were able to alter like a system that you had all set them up so well for, and it allowed them to have consistency and have flexibility in that system. I will pivot into Groons because that's a way more recent one where, to your point earlier, the awareness of the brand might have been much, much lower because this whole thing has only been, as of today, maybe 20, 21 months old, not even 2 years old. And, they had definite growth and definite momentum, but Dr. Squatch at the point of hitting retail had probably done, I don't know exact numbers. We'll say 500 to $700 million in lifetime sales. Like they had some brand. We'd just done a Super Bowl commercial for them, right? Like they had brand awareness. It wasn't saturated to 100%. It's not where it's at today. Groons was a different opportunity and challenge for, hey, they had packaging. It was clearly doing well enough to like go into retail nationwide. And you guys took a really cool, fresh spin on it that I think everyone is responding to. What was the thought process that went through creating this next iteration of the brand?
Yeah, let's start with, to your point, it was a different challenge than Dr. Squatch, right? They're really, the age of the brand is still very young. It's a category that everyone is fully into, understands the education is there around greens and the benefit of a greens product. But the delivery system of greens has typically been the kind of the drink side of things, the AG1s of the world and everything like that. But the thing is with Groons is it had a great product. It was a really good delivery system of a greens product that actually tastes really good. And actually the format play of a ritual and having your daily greens intake in a form of a gummy was cool. And it's different and it's easy and it's convenient and you don't have to mix it. You just pop a little bag in your backpack or whatever with it, or you take it in your lunchbox on the way to school, whatever that might be. But that was in my opinion, where Groons was really starting before we got involved to have a buzz around, was actually, this is a really great greens product that will give me everything that I need. And to your point, it was in DTC. So the story behind a lot of the elements of the brand was being told all once again around the packaging, right? If we look at where Groons was before we got into Groons, yes, it's completely different. And there's a big reason for that, is that we wanted to shift it from being so heavily functional, like it looked very functional as a brand. It looked like a lot of other functional greens brands do, right? Very simple. And because it was on a platform that had this opportunity to talk about the product format, the packaging didn't need to do that, right? So Groons came to us, and it was awesome. It was such a collaborative process. It was not just understanding Groons, but understanding the bigger picture of the opportunity with the brand. But obviously there was some great excitement around now this opportunity to go into retail. So what we did is we moved it from a functional to a more emotive space. It's a bear-shaped candy that's greens and it tastes great, right? But
I
if
love
you were
that
to
you use
look
the term candy. It is not candy, but you're saying it is a joyful experience. And actually, Dan, I'm going to interject something here. When we started working together, again, pre-revenue, we hadn't sold a single thing yet. We started developing out this brand tone of voice that was like fun and had bear
Mhm.
puns and eventually had this mascot, which then also made its way into like the way that you guys are developing out. The way I could see you riffing off of like, ooh, let's make this more accessible, more fun, real quick. And so it was so interesting because you guys, I mean, I think hindsight's 2020. You guys freaking nailed it, right? But there was that moment where I'm like, are we fixing something that's not broken? Right?
Sure.
Like, you guys are selling a lot. We're not doing it at retail yet. I get that we need to evolve this for retail. I remember seeing the first round and being like, this is good. This could go well, which will be questions I ask you later around the
Right.
process, gut instinct,
Right.
testing. But it is interesting because to your point, you guys did a great job of really catching the packaging up to like where the brand voice had started to head. And then you also made sure it was like leading forward. It's fun, it's clear, the benefits are like our benefits and the emotional appeal is all there in the packaging. I just wanted to like give you this like interesting moment too of like, man, I remember seeing the packaging and being like, I think this is going to be really good. But
Yeah.
are
I
we? Yeah, it clearly ended up being so. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it wasn't doing bad, right? Before
Yeah,
we got it ready for retail and the brand. I think, you just mentioned Barry, for example, right? Yeah, they had this really nice, quirky kind of energy to the brand that was happening. But this is why I'm saying, like, going back to challenge the category, not the consumer, is that if you were to take that packaging that they had, you know, before and put that into the category on the shelf, it would blend in with everything else,
boom,
right?
right.
And it would be such a hard sell in its current form to communicate to the consumer that this is a bear-shaped greens product that's a fun delivery system that tastes great, and there's a slight playfulness that comes through that, which is fun and engaging, and to the point, no one else is doing that in the category. And I think that was the big thing for us, is it was there. Do you know what I mean? There was a
Yeah,
lot of stuff that was there, and I think, you know, it was really about stepping back and being like, this is what sets us apart from everyone else, is the the product format, but also the taste appeal of it is the good tasting kind of greens product, the convenience of it. You didn't have to mix it with water. So that's where we started to like step back and look at, right, it's actually a gummy product, right? How do we build those intrinsic feelings into the brand? We developed a bespoke ownable typeface for the brand. We recreated the brand mark. And
you
if you
shifted
look
the
at,
color palette quite a bit.
yeah, and the color palette, because
Yeah, yeah,
once again, the green that was being used before was very much on point with the rest of the greens products that were out there. But we
yep.
wanted to have something that dialed up that feeling of taste, right? It feels juicier, it feels tastier in a color palette with the green and the yellow and the contrast. And so now then you're building in a little bit of that lovely kind of intrinsics of almost the squishiness of a gummy into the typeface with the way that it's kind of built out like that. And then the big thing was like making it really obvious to the consumer that this is a gummy bear greens product,
Right.
right? And so to your point, we took Barry from the world that he was in before and his persona, and we distilled that into more of an ownable asset for the packaging and the brand. In that way, creating that lovely mascot feature of Barry, and then elevating and showing the product. And I think this is a really big, important thing to say. There's a lot of brands that are most of them are new to world brands, right? That have a DTC platform, and then they try to go into retail. And one of the biggest mistakes of going into retail from DTC is people want to know what they're putting in their mouth. And
Right.
fundamentally, if they can't see what they're buying and it's an expensive purchase, they're not gonna buy it, right? So if you look at actually showing the gummy bear itself on the packaging, which we've done as well, Barry on there, it really is a telegraphic way of telling consumers what's inside, and they're not having to work out, because you could look at it and be, is that a powder or is that a gummy? Like,
Right.
because
It's in a bag.
powders
Right.
come in the same kind of format play of the structure of the product. So I think a lot of it was just really understanding what made Grooms different than other alternatives out there? How can we celebrate that? And how can we go in a real distinct and disruptive way with purpose of breaking through in that category whilst being very clear to consumers the benefit and also the clarity
The
around
emotional
what this
value.
product is. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring forward a question that I was going to ask you later because I think it's like I can't not ask at this point, which is as I'm hearing you describe this idea of what you saw in the original packaging and how clearly in your mind it was not ready for retail, right?
Mhm.
And you were totally right. Like no one had ever bought that product without having consumed potentially even a 2 or 3 minute video all about it on
Yep.
YouTube or on Meta, or going to the landing page where they can read all the benefits and everything else. And so, you fundamentally have to shift how you see it. And so what I'm hearing more and more is like, no, like it was so clear that it was not, that it needed X, Y, and Z. Like to your point, even understanding that there's gummy bears inside of it and that it comes in individual packets and all these things seems very clear to you. I can imagine the rub too for people is like, well, what if I fix something that's not broken? How do you know, like with all these brands that you work with, because you're so big on like effectiveness, like it
Mhm.
leading to sales, which is, we definitely share like that line of thinking with how we make creative and how you guys do your design work. How do you like answer to people being like, how do you know this is going to work? Do you test this? And of course, there are so many ways you could focus group test it. I know about on-shelf tests, whatever.
Yeah.
What's your response to that? Like, is it like, hey, we just follow our best practices for you and we're going to live with the result together? Like, how do you answer someone and say, is this going to make my brand actually sell better? Or is it going to have a potential negative impact on my sales by redesigning? How do you navigate that?
Yeah. One thing we do here at Interact is before we even get into design itself is we have that conversation and we do a piece of work called design strategy where we actually make opinions and points of, to your point, what is working and what isn't working, and where we identify the opportunity and why we think against. We will look at the category, we'll look at everything else, and we will have that conversation in a collaborative way with the client team. And what that allows as well is that when we do come back with creative, there really shouldn't be any surprises because we're kind of already started to talk about where, for example, we did it with Groons, right? There was a whole section of that which was like unlock Barry. Like we need to tell consumers about the format play of this product and how unique it is. And so there's that part to it because that comes with knowledge, right? Like honestly, if like when I was sent the product out of context of the environment that it was in, I'd be like, you ask yourself those questions. Could I understand what this is? If I didn't know what it was, could I understand as a consumer what this is? Hey, my wife, do you know what this is? Greens powder, or like, do you know what I mean? So already you know that there's certain things and memory structure and things that associate with products. So that there's a side to us as a business, and I said this at the start, when it's like how ingrained we are in the industry. We're dealing with this every day, right? It's not like we're
Right.
having a first stab at doing this. This is something we know. And as I said earlier on, there are key drivers that need to happen in retail that aren't happening in DTC, and that is product, understanding what it is, what it's about, and why it's good for me. And we do testing. To your point, we actually use a service called Design Analytics, which literally we bring that forward. So a lot of people don't test the redesign until almost the project's over, right? And it's like
Right.
almost the final sense check. What we like to do is after like the first kind of alignment on where we're really gravitating, maybe between two approaches, we put that in as early learning, right? We always say here, we test to learn, we don't test to win. So you learn from that, and that helps you then
Hmm.
strengthen. Do you know what I mean? The challenges, because that is
Yeah.
a retail forward format. So for me, it's a balance of both. Like everyone, depending on the risk factor, needs some sort of facts and figures and kind of substantial backing. But also, there's a bit of sometimes it feels right and it was the right thing to do. And, whenever you do a redesign, Like there's always going to be this slight downfall at the start in sales anyway, with a lot, because people are having to readjust and there's familiarities and understandings of that way.
Yeah.
But like I honestly, yeah, it's just very much of, I think, just understanding the challenge and really bringing everyone along for the ride. I think we're definitely not an agency that is like, okay, give us a brief and we'll see you in 3 weeks and here's your first round of creative. It's very much of, to your point earlier on, Grooms is very successful and Grooms is continuing to grow as an amazing business. And we're still working with Chad on, helping him define and work the brand and create, a whole system for the brand so it can continue to grow. And, it's not a transactional, here's your redesign, see you later. There's always ongoing conversations. And we have that with a lot of our clients. And I think, yeah, building that collaborative approach really allows you to ask the right questions and bring people along.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful because I think it's one of the things I've noticed as we've worked with some of the bigger brands, like truly the largest
Yeah.
CPG brand. It's like they do have a lot of quantitative and qualitative testing that they have, I would say, quote unquote, at their disposal, right? It's part of their processes, systems, budgets. What I've noticed personally is that like it won't tell you necessarily like ding ding ding, like to your point, this is the way, this is a winner. It will help you to potentially see some blind spots, or maybe you're like, wow, I thought this messaging would be very clear and people would get it. But then it
Sure.
comes back that it's like, it's just not as effective. And I'll add that in the world of like, let's say Meta or even YouTube or like any of these online platforms, they are the greatest test of messaging of all time. Like you're not only are you getting real-time feedback from people on whether or not they're paying attention to it, they'll either take action and buy or not. So it's like whenever people are like, "Oh, have you tested X, Y, and Z?" I'm like, "Well, I get, in my mind, I'm like, I get it's one thing if you like just stick it on television and run it and like pray it works, versus like we're now actually in a moment where we're getting way more like on the internet, we're getting a lot of input on things. And then you guys, when you're transitioning things into retail, there is this like leap of faith. I don't know how else to
Yeah.
put it, where it's like at some point you can do all the testing you want, you can get all the input you want. At some point you got to put it out there and it'll either perform or it won't, right? Like you
Mhm.
gotta, there's not like a safety net where you can test your way into 100% guaranteed success, but like you can directionally give yourself as many bumpers to not fall in the gutter. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Is that
You,
is that how you kind of see it?
yeah, like you can't be naive, right? We don't create work that's just beautiful work. We create work that is beautiful and effective. And fundamentally, to your point, is like the idea of testing or having social lists. Like we've done a lot of brands where, to your point, we just drop them, launch them on a social platform to get some early kind of understanding of how the brand's working and stuff. But like the idea of learning and refining something to make it stronger, you like that for me is, we need to be doing that, and we do that. And there's always going to be a risk factor when you're either launching a brand or you're redesigning a brand, but
Right.
also research can really sway it. I'll give you an example. My previous agency, I was working on a massive global redesign of a very iconic brand. That was 3.5 years ago. I started that project. That project is still in research
Wow.
because
Wow.
over and over, and
The
then
overanalyzation. Yeah.
then it, then it brought in more nervousness from senior leaders, and so it can kill the opportunity as well. So I think getting that right balance of gut, understanding the industry, the category, and very
Right.
much like kind of getting early kind of learnings on approaches really helps us create strong brands.
Okay. So Dan, this is again another perfect segue. I mean, this is not planned to be so perfectly segued, but I do want to ask you about so it's easy. I would say let's say I'm a founder, or I'm a
Mhm.
CMO, or I'm a VP of marketing. I'm out there and I'm like looking at Interact and I'm like, oh wow, look, like it's like magic. They take a brand like Built Puff and they redo the packaging. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the same like post floating around where like mother became poppy,
Yeah.
or look at RX bar before and after, and like, wow, this was $1 billion brand and this is a crap brand. All those things, right? Almost like same product, different packaging. Wow, what a great outcome. My gut goes to, I feel like with most things, it's like people could either say redesign actually will be a great next step and or a value add and or could turn our brand around, whatever that mindset might be, or it might just be a massive distraction to an actual real core problem. Like your product is now, maybe you were really big on, I don't know, Atkins, and Atkins is no longer the big thing, or it's like it's anti-trending. How how do you assess when someone comes to you like, hey, you actually have something that a design evolution can, or even rebrand can help change, versus like this is actually a problem with your category, your product market fit, trends. How, because I imagine people come to you and think maybe you have the answer, which is, I mean, we get that as an agency. People come
Mhm.
to us and they're like, you can sell anything. Clearly, you've had so much success. And I'm like, that's not exactly how it works. Like, I won't even take your money, right? Because I want to see you be successful. How often are you having those conversations with people where they're kind of looking at you like maybe you have the magic answer to their challenge?
From my side, it's not just about us having the magic answer. And the reason that we get to the work that we do is because we have this collaborative relationship with the people, the clients that we're working with. And a big part of what you're saying is like, actually, will design or brand creation help solve the problems that your brand has today, or is it fundamentally more about, the product itself isn't doing the right thing, or the product isn't operating in the right way? Like we worked on a brand here, literally we were involved in the product formulation to make sure it was a different take on the energy drink category, for example, right?
Hmm.
And it was actually we were given thoughts and opinions in that. So I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I feel like with a breadth of industry and like experience as an agency, we know how to prod and ask those questions and have those conversations, and 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 as I say, be very transparent and give opinions and thoughts in a way that is a collaborative process to get to the right point. And you know, you look at where you see is like, actually you've got a really good brand here. It's just not kind of it can be strengthened. The assets can be strengthened. They can be, create stronger memory structure, be a lot more clearer and understanding to the consumer. And that's really going to help your sales because people can easily identify their brand a lot quicker. It's not different to really what they've noticed. Sometimes we forget, like, when we do redesign, sometimes everyone's like, oh, that's a big change. But then you put it in front of a consumer and they're like, I don't understand what you guys have, because there's certain things that resonate with consumers that you can balance that so you don't lose and leave them behind. But I think,
Right.
as I was saying earlier on, the point of understanding where their business challenges are and why they think that maybe we are the magic tool for that, but asking those questions before allows us to really create a strong brief for how we move forward and where we see opportunity with the brand.
Yeah. I'm gonna end out the podcast episode today with this unexpected topic, but it's something that you brought up a couple times, and it really got me thinking. Because, look, the bottom line is if you spend any amount of time anywhere on the internet, doesn't matter where you need to be, you will see a lot of people really, really hating on agencies. And
Mm.
my reaction to it, I take it personally in stride because I go, look, I understand why there's a very mixed reaction space out there. Like, everyone, how to put it, agencies do build a reputation for a reason, and part of that is track record of success. Part of it is just caring.
Mhm.
Like caring about being a great partner, being a good, trying your best to do business right. But a lot of people do have negative experiences and they're burned and they have these like feelings where they're just like, it's kind of reminds me of like, oh, well, I've been burned, so I'm never going to date again,
Mm.
and then like, I've been burned before and I'm not going to go through that again. And I feel really good about the amount of value and money and what we've made for like, we have made a lot of money for a lot of people with our
Mm.
agency. And I feel really, really good about that. But I always see the true power of what we provide. And it's something you said like three times in the ability to simultaneously bring some objectivity to their brand. Like we're not married to or tied emotionally to anything that has necessarily been, which can be really helpful because it can be really hard to be like, can we update this? Is it going to upset our mega fans that we updated this, or if we do
Yeah.
this different, like, or oh, will people get this or will they not? Like, and so you have one, the objectivity of that. But the other thing that you have is all of the things that your mind automatically Rolodexes through. And I'm going to give you some examples. You're like, oh, I can already visualize it on the shelf next to everything else. I can tell you exactly why it doesn't work. Whereas like
Right.
that, that, that potential owner or founder or CMO has never once thought about, oh, like let me put this on physically on a Walmart shelf in its category next to everything and then look at it and just objectively say, oh yeah, it blends in. Oh yeah, I don't know what's inside of it. Like your mind automatically sees things that like when you're in the water, it's hard when you're a fish in your own water, it's hard to see outside kind of thing. And I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that ultimately, when someone's paying an agency, it's like, yeah, they are paying a little bit for Dan and Blake and for these people that have seen so much 20 years of both successes and things that maybe didn't go as well, and you learn a lot from that too. I wanted to throw that out there that I can really feel from you that you're like, yeah, my mind automatically knows a lot of these things. Like that's part of the value that people are investing in when it comes to working with an agency, just very
Yeah.
broadly.
Yeah. And look, to your point, a lot of people are either nervous or they've been burnt about using agencies and had bad experiences. And I think, one of the things that we do here at Interact is, you know, we take the client on the journey. As I say, we're not transactional. We have conversations. We understand what their business problems are. We're not just doing this to create great design work. We're doing this to help them solve the problems that they've got, and they've obviously got concerns or problems because they're coming to us as an agency to help move the brand on for whatever reason that might be. And I think, with that in mind, it's very much of when you have your own brand, it's your baby, and
Yep.
you live it, you drink it, you obsess over it, you're almost very protective over it, and you don't see, to your earlier point, you kind of got your blinkers on a little bit, and you'll just keep seeing your brand, and you're not seeing it in context, not only with everything else that's out there in your category, but even a wider spectrum to that. There's so many learnings that we take from one category and bring into another category that the brand itself would never have had that experience.
Yep.
You know, we don't just design the same brand every week. We've worked on tens of thousands of brands here at Interact. I've worked at hundreds of thousands of brands over my time, and as you say, the value of, just knowledge, understanding, especially with us, we work with so many kind of smaller, younger brands, and we balance that with larger brands, but we approach things differently with each of those. A lot
Hmm.
of brands come to us and it's the founders. There's no marketing team, there's no bigger, and some of them have never been in brand, understand what branding
Right.
is. It's a big investment for them, and it's really about, yeah, taking them along on the journey and just being a partner. And fundamentally, we're our happiest and most energized when we work with a team for a time and create a brand, and it goes into store like Groons, for example, and look at that business fly right now. And,
Right.
I don't think you would have got there with a more transactional service, and I don't think you would have got there without a collaborative partner like Chad and the team as well. And yeah, it's really about, moving through things and helping, solve the problems for the clients and setting them up for success for today, tomorrow, and the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great way of putting it because, you know, it's like the tip of the iceberg that you don't see is, you know, yes, like, agencies can work with people to see success, but it's like, take Groons, for example. It's like, we share that experience. And I'm like, yeah, like Chad was a phenomenal partner and client. The people he hired were world class and were incredibly open-minded, incredibly collaborative. Like I mean, I don't know exactly. I wasn't on the calls that you guys had, but I've interacted with the entire team, and I'm like, yeah, when you have a culture that you create with A players that are collaborative, and then they work with other experts in their field, I'm like, then yeah, magic is possible. Like I already know, that's just as much as how good the product itself is. That's also a big part of their success. And it's like, yeah, sometimes, agencies can get a bad rep, but part of it too is like, how do you show up as the client, and I've been on both sides as the client and the agency. So thank you, Dan, for your time today. And, looking forward to designing a better future with you.
Yeah, awesome, man. Lovely to meet you, and thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, for joining us for another episode of Marketing People Love. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe because we have conversations coming up with some of the leading brand founders and some of the leading brands in the world that are growing their brands using marketing and advertising that people love.